Kona Blue have anything to do with the program David Grush says exists? News Nation's Joe Khalil is here now with more. Joe, there is a tiny credibility question here. The Pentagon has been saying for the past year there was never any such reverse engineering program. Now it says, oh, there was one, but it never really got started. Now it says, oh, there was one, but it never really got started.
There were rumors about this program, the codename Kona Blue, for a long time now. And it was only last month that they acknowledged for the first time ever that it existed. Now we are getting an inside look at how this program was propped up. So it's called Kona Blue. It is real. It was a special access program, very highly classified. It was proposed from the Pentagon to the Department of Homeland Security. We now have all of these declassified documents, and in them, it describes the purpose of the program as, and I'm going to quote here, acquiring, studying, and engineering technology that the U.S. got from UAPs, or UFOs. In the documents, it refers to them as AAVs, Advanced Aerospace Vehicles. Ultimately, the program was scrapped by the Department of Homeland Security, but not before. Years of planning went into it from the Pentagon, and it describes in detail how they stood the program up. They set a budget, $12 million to $15 million the first year, going all the way up to $50 million down the road. And the program in these documents now also makes specific reference to locations in Nevada where some material may be housed, at locations in Nevada where some material may be housed. Also references recovered UAP material, personnel with knowledge of recovered technology, and also personnel who know of the whereabouts of this. And just lastly, if you think this sounds too sci-fi, or that this was maybe one or two rogue employees at the Pentagon, in these documents it also shows that the Undersecretary of Science and Technology signed off on this program and approved it, saying in these documents that it was a necessary step for national security. So all of that is in here now. We did get a response from the Department of Homeland Security today, and they said simply, quote, while this program was considered under a prior administration, it was never fully established by the Department of Homeland Security. DHS has released these classified documents consistent with its commitment to transparency. So, Elizabeth, it looks like we now have some very clear specifics about what was in this, at least, proposal for this plan from the Pentagon.
And what do we make of the fact that they keep talking about locations in Nevada and material being housed in Nevada? What is that a reference to?
In 1989, KLAS-TV aired a live interview with a shadowy man who didn't use his real name. Now, the story he told was pretty outrageous, but 30 years later, it is still causing waves.
Bob Lazar's allegations about alien technology being tested in the Nevada desert ignited worldwide interest and put the then-secret military base known as Area 51 on the map.
For the live interview, we used a pseudonym. We called him Dennis. That turned out to be the name of his boss at a place called S4, a facility built into the side of a mountain, disguised to look like natural terrain. It would be another 7 months before the world learned the guy's real name was Bob Lazar, but the public didn't wait. The race to Area 51 was on, and the cultural ripples are still being felt.
It all started 30 years ago with an anonymous interview on KLAS-TV and turned Area 51 into a Hollywood staple.
You could have just handed me a piece of a UFO from Area 51.
And the coup de grace, Area 51. There have never been any spacecraft. There's no Area 51. There's no recovered spaceship.
Excuse me, Mr. President, that's not entirely accurate.
It would probably take an Indiana Jones-sized warehouse to stash all the pop culture references to Area 51. The oh-so-secret facility, the place that did not officially exist for decades, is the rock star of military bases, literally. This is the simple drawing he made at the time.
Here, now I had access and was permitted to view and look at the operation of this main level with the gravity amplifiers and the level below.
The premise seems less preposterous now. In a new documentary about Lazar, he describes in detail the spacecraft he worked on 30 years ago.
The craft that I worked on, that when it's going to travel a long distance, that is how it operates. It flies along and it puts its belly to the target and then brings all the amplifiers to power, and it shoots off in that direction. It doesn't fly as it would in the science fiction movies. It flies with the belly, the bottom forward.
If the description of a spacecraft tilting sounds familiar, take a look at the so-called gimbal UFO, a video released by the Pentagon in 2017. Naval pilots encountered a fleet of these unknown craft off the coast of Florida in 2015 and have since had dozens of similar encounters.
In the gimbal video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration. When Bob saw that, he came to the conclusion, this has to be a gravity-propelled craft. That it does mimic exactly the propulsion system that Bob Lazar described.
There's no question in my mind. I mean, I'm virtually certain that's the way the craft operated, and that uses close to or the exact same propulsion system.
Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of A.A.T.I.P, the secret Pentagon study. He told us one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. Lazar made similar claims decades ago and was ridiculed. Now the Pentagon is on the same page.
Where the study of UFOs did not end in 1969 with Project Blue Book. In fact, that was a lie, and it is now an admitted lie by our own Pentagon. We are living in a world where it is understood that there are craft technologically advanced from unknown origin that are performing maneuvers that far exceed anything of human technology.
I can tell you there are people inside the Defense Department, former and serving, who do believe that the claims made in the Kona Blue documents were authentic. But that's vigorously disputed, of course, by the A.A.R.O, the Pentagon's UAP investigation team. They did their historical review and published a few weeks ago, and they said, yes, there was this codename Kona Blue program that was proposed, never implemented, but proposed as a special access program, one of the deepest, darkest secrets in the US government. And they claim at A.A.R.O that, of course, they investigated and they found no evidence to support claims of retrieved non-human technology. All I can tell you, Elizabeth, is that we now have a very clear difference of opinion inside the Defense Department and also inside the intelligence community. Because one of the things that's conspicuous, ever since that A.A.R.O historical report was published a few weeks ago, which refuted Kona Blue's documents and said that there was nothing in the whole program, the allegations were based on false premises. What's been conspicuous is that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the intelligence czar that was appointed post 9/11 to centralize and control intelligence in the United States, they haven't backed the Pentagon's claims in the A.A.R.O report.
Have they contradicted them, or are they just not commenting?
They're just not commenting. And it's very interesting because I'm told there is a split between the intelligence community and the Defense Department. The Pentagon's decided to bluff it out and go it alone. There are people who are passionately of the view that there is authentic, recovered, non-human technology in the possession of the United States, and they are determined to get access to it so that its utility can be exploited, weapons can be developed, technologies can be advanced to the benefit of the American people. The problem is there's a group inside the Pentagon, they believe, who are blocking access to this technology, and that's what the decision to not make Kona Blue a special access program was all about. This was an attempt by a group of committed people inside the Pentagon who do believe this technology exists to try and make sure that they did everything properly by the book, by the law.
Is it
and
possible,
unfortunately, they were blocked.
Ross, is it possible that David Grush might have conflated? I mean, was it Kona Blue that he was talking about, or was he talking about a completely different program?
I'm sure the Pentagon would love you all to believe that David Grush is a deluded person who has no idea what he's talking about. And that's certainly the line they're pushing at the moment. What I can tell you is that there is an abundance of independent, objective witnesses who back what David Grush says to the hilt.
My name is Mark McCandlish, and for the better part of the last 30 years, I've been a conceptual artist, illustrator, and designer, working predominantly for the aerospace and defense industries. About 1988, I came into some information that indicated that the United States government was in possession of and operating a kind of anti-gravity technology through a system, an aircraft that was referred to as the flux liner or as the alien reproduction vehicle.
Lockheed Martin is the top-grossing defense firm in the world, and the U.S. government supports that business to the tune of over $37.7 billion. It surpasses its closest competitors Boeing and Raytheon by nearly $20 billion in arms sales. These funds are granted by Congress to provide equipment that enables the U.S. military to protect the country at home and abroad. So why is Lockheed the defense darling of the U.S. government, and how did it beat out its competitors? One of the top priorities of all administrations is the protection and safety of the American people. To ensure that, politicians work with defense contractors to provide equipment to the military. This partnership provides a unique opportunity for private corporations to execute the will of the government and requires a delicate balance.
President Eisenhower, in his farewell address, coined the term military-industrial complex. And what he was talking about was the close connection and collaboration between arms contractors and the uniformed military.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
For most of the defense industry, their biggest source of business is the Department of Defense. So they kind of live and die with the defense budget. As it increases, their revenue increases. As it decreases, their revenue decreases.